My Dreaming Soap. Welcome to my channel. Now, as you can see, there's a whole bunch of things on my table here, but what I'm going to do first of all is just talk about the soap that I'm going to make. Now, this is a soap that I'm actually making for someone, but they don't know. I'm just going to send it to them, hopefully as a pleasant surprise. And it's going to be a soap for, you may have heard me chatting about Sensory Perfection, one of the really lovely fragrance oil suppliers that we have in the UK. And Joe is shutting the business just because of all the hideous regulations and everything that make things so restrictive here in the UK. So what I thought I would do is take one of her lovely fragrances and turn it into a soap, and then I'm going to send that soap to her. So the idea for my soap design was to take the Sensory Perfection logo, which I'll just bring up on the screen here, and this is what I'm going to try to turn it into a soap. Now, I've sort of tweaked the design a little bit. I'm not going to have the Sensory Perfection writing through it, but I'm going to keep the elements of all the little bottles and the butterfly and the dragonfly and the flowers and all that sort of stuff. So this is the design that I've actually come up with. So let's have a look at what I've got on my table, shall I? So a whole bunch of embeds. Now, I didn't do these on the video for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't want to spend this much time on a video just extruding things. You see me extrude stuff loads of times on a video. And also, secondly, I actually made them quite early this morning. I started making them at like 3 o'clock this morning. That's a fairly normal time for me to get up, by the way. It's just not abnormal. I tend to get up really early. And there's just lighting situation at that point of time isn't great for videoing. So what I've got here, in this section over here, I've made a whole load of bottles, as you can see on my little illustration here, some taller ones, some shorter ones, some skinnier ones, some with pointy caps, some with just normal caps. That's what I've got here. These three things in the middle here that I've got are the little dragonflies that are at the top of the soap. And then here I've got a bunch of little flowers to go right at the bottom. These rather speckly things are in between the flowers. There are actually some sort of like rose shape flowers, and they are sort of done with a curl through the middle. So how I tried to achieve those is I got some pink soap dough, rolled it out really flat and then cut it into strips, and then I painted it with some mica in distilled water and then rolled them up like sausage rolls into these thin tubes, and then just roll them out. So hopefully they'll turn up looking like these little rosy type flowers that we've got. And then lastly, this chap here is going to be my butterfly that's sitting on my yellow jar. Okay, so those are all my embeds. It did take quite a while to make them, and it looks like a lot of stuff to try and get into a soap, so let's hope it all fits. Let's start putting this soap together then, shall we? So what I've done here is I've calculated and weighed out the oils I need for the very base of the soap around all the little flowers, and then also the main purple arched area behind all of the bottles. And because I want both of those to be the same colour, I've put my colourant in there with both of those amounts of oil. So in here I've got some TD, which has already been dispersed, so it's going to mix in nicely. That's sunk straight to the bottom. And I've got some Purple Passion from Pure Rock Pearls. So this is just my oils at the moment. So I'm just going to get this colour mixed in. Okay, so I think I'm quite happy with that colour that I've got. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to split off the oils that I want for my first batch. Now, one of the things just to be careful of with when you're doing this is I originally knew how much oil I wanted for my first and my second split, as it were, for the two areas. And I knew those, like one was 145 grams and the other was, I know, 900 and something grams. But I have now changed those amounts because I've added in some TD and I've also added in some other mica. So those amounts have changed. So could you see that? I mean, it won't be a massive difference, but if I just poured off 145 grams of oil for my first bit, I wouldn't actually be taking enough of this mixture out, would I? Because that 145 grams now is actually smaller, isn't it? Because it's got the oil, it's got the mica, and it's got the TD in there. So I need to recalculate and work out how much I now actually need to pour off. So how I'll do that is I will now weigh this again, and then I'll just divide it out in the percentages of how much related to that 145 grams and how much relates to the other areas, just to make sure that I get it right and I don't have an area with too much lye in versus not enough. To be honest, with this small adjustment for the mica and that, it wouldn't have given me a lye heavy soap because I've got super fat in there, but it's nice to get things nice and sorted and accurate, isn't it, as we're doing it. So I've split out my soap and I have actually turned it into soap, so I've added the lye. It goes very well with my gloves, doesn't it? Okay, so I ended up having to sort of pour off an extra 3 grams to account for all the changes in the lye and everything. Sorry, all the change in the mica and everything. In goes my fragrance oil. Now the fragrance oil I'm using is one of my favourites from Sensory Perfection. It's called Galaxy of Stars. And it is, it's a really difficult fragrance. I'll have to put up a description of it. It is an absolutely gorgeous fragrance. I do really love it. And I know people who've bought soaps with Galaxy of Stars in from me in the past. I even had one lady who asked me about the fragrance and they couldn't get it in the US and ended up shipping some from Sensory Perfection to the US just so they could have it. So it is a beautiful fragrance. I have stocked up on it before Joe closes. Right, so I'm just going to pour this into the base. Okay, and then I'm just going to bring all these embeds in.
What's it like to be the one that he turns to when he's out of answers? What's it like to be the one that he comes to when he wants to dance? And I wonder what's that like? I have got him on my mind, but he doesn't know my name, and I'm running out of time.
Okay, so you probably can't see them, they're off screen a little bit, but I've got all my bottles lined up in the order that I want them according to my plan. I'm going to get some of this soap in. It doesn't matter if it mixes with the layer below because it's exactly the same soap, isn't it? So that's fine. Right. Now I'm going to start putting these in.
He doesn't know my name. What's it like to hold his hand when he tells you that you're all he wants? And it's midnight, oh, I'm thinking about him. I have got him on my mind, but he doesn't know my name, and I'm running out of time. I wish you felt the same, and I'm acting stupid like every day. Don't know what to do or what I should say, 'cause I have got him on my mind, but he doesn't know my name. I wanna hold his hand, 'cause I can't stop thinking about him. And would he understand if I told him how I feel about him?
Okay, so I've tried very hard to get into all of those tiny weeny little gaps. I think I've done it. I've given it a good couple of bangs down while this batter is nice and fluid. So I can start doing the rest. Now the next thing I need to do is try and get a butterfly to sit on the edge of this jar here. So I'm just going to add a little bit more soap in that area. And try not to cover up the top of that jar. I want to be able to see it. Okay, so I'm just going to pop this in, and I want to scoop up some soaps underneath it, and I want it resting on the lip of that jar. So I'm just going to pour some soap underneath to support it. And I'm just being very, very careful with the way that I pour this, because I want to pour a bit each side just to try and keep that butterfly into the same position. So once again, I'm going to leave that to set up a little bit, and then I'm going to sculpt it slightly because I want to do this arch effect. So I'm going to sculpt it, and then I'm going to drag a scraper through it. Okay, so let's see if we can get this scraped now, shall we? So I'm just going to ideally just move the soap around. I don't want to take any out. Get this at the right height. Okay, I'm pretty well there with that. Now, if you are just scraping soap off, then that's fine, that's much quicker to do. If you're trying to just spread your soap out and not waste any, you are going to have to spend some time just gradually raising up your scraper. So I'm just going to raise mine up a tiny bit. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to have a tiniest little bit to take out, just to tidy up that end. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to pour a tiny bit of this into a squeeze bottle, and I'll explain why obviously as I use it. Let's go and get that mould now. So now I need to get my dragonflies. They're dragonflies anyway. If they're not, well, that's what they look like to me. So what I'm going to my squeeze bottle for is, gosh, can't pick them up, is these dragonflies. Can you see I've got lots of little bits in them, and therefore lots of little gaps. So what I want to do is, I want to get these into the soap, obviously. We'll put down a little bit of a base of the white. But I want to make sure I don't have any air gaps in them. So what I'm going to do, which will be a little bit messy, and sometimes I do this with a paintbrush and all sorts of things, I'm just going to make sure I just use this squeeze bottle to get in those gaps. Because sometimes if you just push an embed like this into the soap, you can end up getting holes in it. Now normally I would just do this on the side, but I'm trying to show you, which is why it's probably looking a lot more messier than it needs to be. And I'll do the others on the side, because this is getting quite messy, isn't it? But yeah, can you see I'm just using that squeeze bottle to make sure I'm filling up my embed, those little niggly bits in it. And once I've done that, I can pop that into my soap. Okay, I'm just going to fill these other embeds up on the side. Has actually got that to thicken up quite a bit, hasn't it? But it's still a lovely consistency to work with. Right, we can now get the rest of this on. I think I can afford to put that up a little bit more with a slightly taller soap. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave it like that. I've got a little bit of soap right at the top here, but that's fine because that's not actually going to be on the soap. I am going to cover this. I'm not going to put my lid on it. I'm going to cover it in another way. I'll probably just use some cardboard or something. And that's because the very top of this cloud is coming just a tiny weeny bit over the height of the silicone liner. So if I put the lid on, that's going to touch onto that. So I'm just going to cover it another way, put it on a heating mat and leave that overnight. I leave the heating mat on for about an hour or so and then just leave it wrapped in towels, just because this is too big to go in my oven so I can't see pop it. So here we are with our soap now all ready to cut. So let's get it on the cutter. I often get asked about what this is at the end of my cutter. As you can see, my loaf is slightly too long for this cutter, so I need to cut it in chunks. And what I don't like is when you cut it down in chunks and then the end just sort of falls off and bashes. So this is just to hold it at the same level so that when I cut through this loaf, what will happen is that will just stay nice and safely there. I won't go crashing down to the table or anything. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got with a few of these on the inside. And there we go. Oh, I'm really pleased with those. And my bottles have come out really well. I love my little flowers on the top. I've got a tiny bit of, can you see there with the one with the butterfly on? Slightly wonky. Maybe when I put that butterfly on, maybe I pushed the bottle a little bit. But overall, I'm really pleased that I've managed to get some soap right in between the gaps. I was a little worried that perhaps I might end up with some little holes in them, but I don't seem to have any at all. I really like my little dragonflies at the top. Let's have a look at another couple. think they're dragonflies. They look like dragonflies to me. Sorry if they're not dragonflies, but there they are with our little bottles and everything all the way along. I'll just put up a picture of what I was trying to achieve. I'm just going to check further along. Let's just make sure we haven't got any holes. No, I think we're all right. We've got some slightly wobbly bottles every now and again, but I think we seem to be hole free, so that's great news. So what I'm going to do with these is, obviously I'm going to get them fully cured, and then I'm going to package some of them up, not necessarily all of them, but a good chunk of them, probably about half of them up, so that Joe will get about sort of 9 bars or something, and send them out to us. And then I'm going to put the other ones in the shop for people who might want to buy one. Okay, so I was just going to leave them like this, but I've decided that I am actually going to stamp them with Sensory Perfection on them, just to sort of complete them. So I've just made a little stamp. I've squirted it with rubbing alcohol. Just going to get it sort of lined up as straight as I can. Okay, get that pushed in. Okay, it's a little bit wet at the moment because of the rubbing alcohol. That's come out quite nicely. Let's just do another one and then I'll do the others off camera. Okay, there we are.
And then as normal, I'll just leave you with a final photo of the soap. I do think in the UK that we're really lucky with a lot of our soap suppliers. I know we don't have the huge variety and the big suppliers that maybe countries like the US have, for example, but a lot of our suppliers are so brilliant with the products that they offer and the customer service that they give us. So from those points of view, I do think we are incredibly lucky. And Jo has always been one of those suppliers who has been so fantastic with her customer service and the quality of the fragrance oils she offers. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, folks, and you like the soap. If you have, it'll be great if you gave me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see what I'm making in the future, why not subscribe to my channel? Thanks for watching, everyone. Happy soaping!